My name is Emma Carter, and for as long as I can remember, my family treated me less like a daughter and more like, well, a maid who happened to share their last name. Growing up in the Carter household, roles were never balanced. My younger sister Chloe was the shining star, beautiful, outspoken, pampered. My parents, Patricia and Richard Carter, always made sure she had the best of everything. Designer dresses, expensive tutors, endless praise. And me? I was the invisible one. Invisible until someone needed the dishes washed, invisible until the table needed to be set, invisible until dinner had to be cooked for 30 guests. That was my life. Not a daughter, not an equal, just the family servant hiding in plain sight. But before I tell you how I went from maid to boss, you need to understand the kind of cage I grew up in. Emma, help Chloe with her homework. My mom would bark, even though Chloe was 2 years younger and perfectly capable. Emma, tidy up the living room before guests arrive. Emma, don't argue. Just do what your sister can't. If Chloe spilled juice, I cleaned it. If she threw tantrums, I got blamed for not keeping her calm. It wasn't sibling rivalry, it was a system. A system where one child was golden and the other was disposable. By the time I was a teenager, the pattern was unshakable. Chloe would waltz into the kitchen, announce she had an idea for her future PR firm, and my mom would beam with pride. Meanwhile, if I mentioned my dreams of hospitality, of running my own events company someday, she would smirk. Emma, be realistic. You'll never be a leader. You're better at helping than leading. Just cook, maybe. That's what you're good for. I should have been crushed. And in a way I was. But somewhere inside me, her words lit a fire. Fast forward years later. I was 32, living in a modest apartment in New York, quietly running something my parents had no idea about, Stellar Events, a luxury catering and event management company I had built from scratch. While they thought I was unemployed and a failure, I had grown Stellar Events into a multi-million-dollar enterprise with 50 employees, 3 locations, and a reputation that made even Fortune 500 companies line up for my services. But to my parents, I was still the maid. The breaking point came on Christmas Eve. Patricia, my mother, had been bragging for weeks about hosting the most elegant dinner party of the year. 30 guests, she told everyone at her country club. My daughter Emma will prepare the entire meal. She's good at that, you know, cooking. She doesn't have a career, but at least she can manage a kitchen. Thing is, I never agreed to it. In fact, I had told her weeks earlier that I wouldn't be home for Christmas Eve. I had a very important pre-dinner meeting scheduled the next night with Olivia Zhang, CEO of Pinnacle Hospitality, a deal that could change my company's future forever. But Patricia didn't listen. She never did so when the Carter family mansion filled with executives, neighbors, and high society guests. There was no food ready. The kitchen was spotless because I wasn't there. No appetizers. No roast. Nothing. Panic set in. Chloe scrambled to call takeout places. My father looked helpless. And my mother? She ordered 5 boxes of Papa John's and 3 boxes from Domino's, served on Waterford crystal plates. Yes, you heard that right. The woman who bragged about her daughter's culinary skills ended up serving greasy pizza at the biggest event of her social calendar. I wasn't there, but my sister Chloe kept sending me frantic texts. Victoria Zhang looks disgusted. People are leaving. Mom told everyone you're unstable, that you ruined everything. She says you've always been the family disappointment. By the time her last message came through, party's over. Everyone left early. Victoria didn't even stay for dessert. Mom says you're dead to her. I wasn't surprised that I just put my phone down and ordered room service breakfast at the hotel, because while my family's world was crumbling, mine was just about to begin. The next night at 7 p.m. sharp, I walked into the Pinnacle Resort wearing my best suit. My stomach churned with nerves, but my mind was steady. This was the biggest deal of my life, the one I had worked toward in silence for years. When Olivia Zhang arrived, she greeted me warmly. Emma, so sorry for being late. I just flew in from the most bizarre Christmas Eve party in Connecticut. My heart skipped a beat. I knew exactly which party she meant. I smiled politely. Oh, what happened? You won't believe this, Olivia said, shaking her head. The hostess promised this elaborate gourmet meal prepared by her daughter. We arrived to absolute chaos. No food prepared, nothing in the kitchen, and then suddenly pizza boxes. Can you imagine? Pizza. For executives and investors she'd been trying to impress for months. I kept my face neutral. That must have been awkward. It gets worse, Olivia continued. The hostess, Patricia Carter, I think her name was, spent the entire evening insulting her own daughter, called her mentally unstable, unemployed, a disappointment. The whole room heard it. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. There was my mother, flushed red, pizza boxes stacked on her expensive mahogany table. Chloe was in the background trying to serve slices of Papa John's on china plates worth more than most people's rent. Olivia sighed. It was the most unprofessional evening I've ever attended. And that poor daughter. Can you imagine being treated like that in public? I folded my hands over my portfolio, calm as ever. That is terrible, I said. I can't imagine treating family that way. And just like that, Olivia set her phone aside, opened her menu and smiled. Now let's discuss something more pleasant. Your company. In that moment I had a choice. I could have revealed myself, told her that I was the disappointment her hostess had spent the evening tearing apart. But I didn't. I wanted the right moment. The perfect moment. Because I knew deep down that the truth was about to collide with consequences, and when it did, it wouldn't just shift the room. It would shatter everything my parents thought they knew. The meeting with Olivia Zhang should have been purely business. Contracts, numbers, logistics, that's what I came prepared for. But the universe has a twisted sense of humor. As she flipped through my portfolio, I noticed the change in her expression. Her brows lifted. Her lips curved into the faintest smirk. This branding, she said slowly, tracing the embossed silver lettering on the folder. Stellar Events. You're the founder. Yes, I said steady. The founder, the CEO, and the creative director. Her eyes gleamed with recognition. Stellar Events. I've heard about you. I didn't realize I'd be sitting across from its mastermind. I felt my chest tighten, pride mixing with restraint. 4 years I had been the quiet worker, the invisible one in my own family. To hear the word mastermind attached to my name, it hit deeper than I expected. But I didn't let it show. Instead, I leaned in, professional, composed. I prefer results to recognition. She studied me for a moment, then smiled knowingly. That makes sense. But something tells me recognition is about to find you, whether you want it or not. For the next 2 hours we walked through every detail of my pitch. I had prepared meticulously: luxury destination weddings, corporate galas, international conferences. Stellar Events had the resources, the network, the chefs, and the creativity. Olivia interrupted only once to say, "You're operating at a level most firms twice your size can't even touch." The contract was worth 7 figures. Enough to expand my company into Europe, to secure my employees' futures, to prove once and for all that the Maid my parents mocked was more than they could ever dream of being. When she finally set down her pen and signed, she extended her hand across the table. "Congratulations, Emma. Stellar Events is now the official partner of Pinnacle Hospitality." My throat tightened. I shook her hand firmly. "Thank you. I won't let you down." But Olivia wasn't finished. "There's something else," she said, leaning back in her chair. "I know you're discreet, but I'd like to ask you a personal question." I nodded cautiously. "Go ahead." "That disaster of a Christmas Eve dinner. Patricia Carter's daughter. Do you know her?" I froze. My pulse quickened. For 32 years I had kept my humiliation private, endured it in silence. But in that moment I realized silence wasn't strength anymore. It was time. "Yes," I said quietly. "I know her." Olivia tilted her head. "How?" "Because that daughter is me." Her eyes widened. The silence stretched long enough for me to hear my own heartbeat. Then she laughed. Not cruelly, but incredulously. You are the daughter she called unstable? The one she said couldn't even manage a kitchen?" "Yes," I said. My voice was steady now, steel replacing shame. "That was me." While she was bragging about her perfect family and humiliating me in front of strangers, I was building the company she just signed a contract with. Olivia's laughter faded into something sharper. Admiration. Respect. "Emma Carter," she said slowly, "you are full of surprises." Over the next few days, word of my new partnership spread through industry circles like wildfire. Journalists called, blogs wrote about the rising star of luxury events. My parents had no idea. To them, I was still the daughter who had abandoned their party. But fate doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It creates. 1.2 weeks later, Pinnacle Hospitality announced a joint press conference to unveil their new luxury events partnership. And who do you think they invited to attend? The Carter family. Of course, Patricia assumed Olivia was inviting her because of their friendship from that infamous dinner party. She dressed herself and Chloe in designer gowns, dragging my father along in a tailored suit, and when they entered the glittering ballroom at the Waldorf Astoria, who did they see standing at the center podium, cameras flashing, reporters swarming? Me. Patricia froze. Chloe blinked, confused. My father's mouth actually fell open as I stepped to the microphone, smiled at the audience, and spoke with the confidence of a woman who had nothing left to prove. Good afternoon. My name is Emma Carter, founder and CEO of Stellar Events. Today, I am proud to announce our exclusive partnership with Pinnacle Hospitality, led by the extraordinary Olivia Zhang. The room erupted in applause. Photographers snapped photos. Olivia nodded proudly from her seat beside the stage. And in the middle of it all, my parents sat pale and stunned. The same people who had treated me like a servant now watching their maid stand before the world as a such. I didn't look at them. Not yet. They weren't ready. When the conference ended, reporters swarmed Olivia and me. Questions flew. How did Stellar Events grow so quickly? What makes you different? What inspired you to start your company? I answered gracefully, never mentioning my family. But when the cameras were off and the crowd dispersed, Patricia marched forward. Her smile was brittle, her eyes sharp. Emma, darling. What a surprise. I tilted my head. Mother. Father. Chloe. You could have told us, she hissed under her breath. Do you have any idea how humiliating it was to find out this way? I met her glare with calm indifference. Do you have any idea how humiliating it was to be treated like a maid in my own home for 30 years? Her face went white. My father cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. Chloe fidgeted with her clutch, eyes darting between us. Olivia walked up at that moment, slipping an arm through mine. Is this your family? She asked. Yes, I said. This is Patricia and Richard Carter. And my sister Chloe. Olivia's smile was polite but cool. Ah. The hosts of the famous pizza gala. Lovely to meet you. Patricia flushed crimson and I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. The balance of power had shifted. And they knew it. That night, Olivia invited me to a private dinner with several executives. To my shock, Patricia insisted she and Chloe tag along. First, I wanted to refuse. But then, I realized something. For once in my life, I had the chance to let them see me not as the invisible daughter, not as the family maid, but as the leader I had become. So I agreed. The restaurant was a 5-star rooftop overlooking the city. As soon as we arrived, the staff greeted me warmly. Miss Carter, welcome back. Your usual table is ready. Patricia blinked. Chloe looked stunned. My father stared at the waiter as if he'd spoken another language throughout the meal. The executives directed every question to me. Olivia toasted to my leadership. My staff hovered nearby, attentive to my every word, and my parents? They sat in silence, watching the daughter they had dismissed command the room they had always wanted to enter. To be wide dessert. Patricia couldn't take it anymore. She leaned forward, her voice trembling. Emma, I had no idea. All these years you should have told us. I set down my wine glass, met her eyes, and spoke the truth I had carried for decades. I did tell you. You just never listened. That night ended without drama. But something inside my parents broke. For the first time in their lives, they were forced to see me, not as the help, not as the disappointment, but as the boss. And it terrified them. Because they knew the power dynamic had shifted forever. That I wasn't their maid anymore. That I was the woman they had to impress. After that rooftop dinner, things in the Carter household shifted, but not in the way they expected. Patricia and Richard didn't suddenly become loving, supportive parents. No, they became desperate. Patricia, ever the social climber, realized she had made a catastrophic mistake. The daughter she had mocked, dismissed, and degraded was now the gateway to the social circle she had spent her life clawing toward, and Patricia was nothing if not determined to claw her way back into relevance. It started with subtle gestures. Flowers sent to my office with handwritten notes. So proud of you. Love, Mom. Invitations to family dinners at their house. Dinners I knew would be less about bonding and more about displaying me like a trophy. Even my father, Richard, began showing up in ways he never had before. He called me at work asking about my projects. He even dropped by one of my corporate galas, standing awkwardly near the bar as if he'd always been supportive. But their efforts reeked of performance, not sincerity. They weren't proud of me. They were proud of what my success could do for them, and I wasn't about to let them use me as their golden ticket. While Patricia schemed and Richard scrambled, Chloe unraveled. My sister had built her entire identity around being the golden child, the perfect daughter, the shining example. She thrived on comparison, on always being the one who looked better. But now, she couldn't compete. Everywhere we went, people compared us, but for the first time the comparison favored me. To the country club, whispers floated through the air. Did you hear about Emma Carter's company? 100 employees already. She's doing better than Chloe, isn't she? I wonder how Patricia feels about her Maid-turned daughter. Chloe's smile grew tighter by the day. She plastered social media with photos of herself at brunches, luxury boutiques, exotic vacations, but the likes dwindled. People weren't interested in her curated perfection anymore. They wanted to know about me. One evening, she cornered me in the ladies' room at a charity gala. Her lipstick was flawless, her gown custom, but her eyes burned with fury. You think you're so much better than me now, don't you? She spat. I looked at her calmly, adjusting my earrings. I don't think I'm better than anyone. I just stopped letting you treat me like I was worse. Her jaw clenched. She wanted to scream, but the sound of heels clicking against marble silenced her. Other women entered, whispering my name with admiration. Chloe stormed out, her mask cracking. Over the next few weeks, Patricia doubled down. She invited me to luncheons, teas, even Sunday church service, all events where she could parade me in front of her friends. But the most absurd invitation came in the form of a golden boss card delivered to my office. Carter Family Appreciation Gala, hosted by Patricia and Richard Carter in honor of their beloved daughter, Emma Carter, CEO of Stellar Events. I nearly laughed out loud when I read it. For years they had downplayed me, dismissed me, and now they wanted to throw a gala in my honor. I tossed the card into the trash. But Patricia wasn't done. She called me personally. Emma, darling, it would mean the world to us if you came, she purred, her voice syrupy sweet. It's time the world sees how close we are as a family. I paused. You mean it's time the world sees how close you are to me? There's a difference. Her voice faltered. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do, I said flatly. I won't be your prop, mother. Not now. Not ever. I hung up before she could respond. Of all people, my father surprised me the most. 4 years he had been Patricia's shadow, silent, compliant, complicit. But now, perhaps shamed by my courage or inspired by it, he began to find his voice. One evening, he showed up at my office unannounced. He looked older, wearier, but also freer. I need to apologize, he said simply. I raised a brow. For what exactly? For not stopping her. For not protecting you. For letting her words define your worth instead of standing up and saying, that's my daughter, and she deserves respect. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. For the first time I believed him. I can't undo the past, he continued, but I want to be different now. I want to be the kind of father you can be proud of. I studied him carefully. Was this another performance? Another attempt to win back relevance? But no. His eyes were raw, stripped of pride. For once he wasn't trying to impress me. He was simply trying to be honest. Then start by respecting me, I said softly. Not as your daughter. Not as your maid. But as a person who doesn't owe you anything. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. The final straw came during the annual Metropolitan Charity Gala, the crown jewel of the city's social calendar. Patricia and Chloe had always prided themselves on being front and center at this event, dripping in diamonds, basking in attention. This year, however, the spotlight shifted. Olivia Zhang and I co-hosted the gala. Stellar Events had been hired to design and coordinate the entire evening. It was our biggest project yet, and it was flawless. Guests gasped at the decor, the entertainment, the cuisine. Reporters snapped photos of me beside Olivia, quoting my speeches, praising my leadership. And Patricia? She fumed silently at a corner table, watching as people bypassed her to congratulate me. By the end of the night, she snapped as I stood near the stage, thanking guests for their generosity. Patricia stormed forward, her heels clattering against marble. "Don't be fooled," she cried, her voice shrill, desperate. "This girl isn't who she pretends to be. She's nothing but." But before she could finish, Olivia stepped between us, her voice like steel. "Careful, Patricia. You're speaking about the woman who just raised $500,000 for children's hospitals. The woman who built a company from the ground up. The woman who is my business partner and my friend." The room went silent. Patricia's face drained of color. Chloe tugged at her arm, hissing, "Mom, stop!" But it was too late. The mask Patricia had worn for decades, of control, of superiority, shattered in front of everyone. And in that silence I felt something shift forever. I was no longer invisible, I was undeniable. The fallout from the Metropolitan Charity Gala spread faster than gossip in a small town. Within hours, videos of Patricia's public outbursts circulated across social media. Clips were everywhere. Patricia lunging toward the stage, her voice shrill, Olivia Zhang stepping in with icy authority. The comments were merciless. "Isn't that Patricia Carter? Didn't she humiliate her daughter at Christmas? Looks like karma finally served the main course. Imagine calling your own child a maid, only for her to outshine you as a CEO." By the next morning, Patricia's phone was silent. No brunch invitations. No charity boards. Even her bridge group politely suspended meetings. She had become radioactive, and she hated it. But Patricia Carter wasn't one to go down quietly. If the world saw her as the villain, she would reinvent herself as the repentant mother. She booked therapy sessions loudly, publicly. She was seen entering mindfulness retreats, joining panels on parental growth, even donating to causes inspired by her daughter's leadership. It was performative, transparent, but effective enough to make some people soften. The real test came when she cornered me one afternoon at the country club. She looked smaller somehow, not from weight loss but from deflation. "Emma," she began, her voice unusually quiet, "I owe you an apology. Not just for the gala. For years of everything." I studied her carefully. "Why now?" Her eyes shimmered with rehearsed tears. "Because I see the woman you've become. And I want to be part of your life. Part of your success." There it was, the truth peeking through the performance. "You want access," I said flatly. Her mask slipped for a second. Then she sighed, trying again. "I want my daughter." I shook my head. "You had her. You had me. And you chose to treat me like staff. Now I don't need you." Her tears fell, genuine or not, I couldn't tell. But I didn't care. I walked away. While Patricia scrambled for sympathy, Richard quietly worked on redemption. He didn't post about it. He didn't beg for attention. He simply showed up. When Stellar Events opened a new office downtown, he sent flowers with a card that read, "To Emma, from Dad. Proud of you." When my company won an award, he called late at night just to say, "I saw the news. Congratulations." It wasn't much, but it was real. And for a man who had spent decades mute in Patricia's shadow, it meant something. One evening, after a long day, I found him waiting outside my office. "Dinner?" he asked. We ended up at a quiet Italian restaurant, eating pasta like old friends. For the first time, he told me about his regrets. "I let your mother's voice drown out mine," he admitted. "I thought silence was keeping the peace. But really it was destroying us. Destroying you." I listened, not ready to absolve him but willing to hear him. "Do you know what I admire most about you, Emma?" he asked softly. "You found your voice. And you never gave it up." For a moment I almost forgave him. Almost. While Patricia played the repentant mother and Richard sought quiet redemption, Chloe spiraled into bitterness. Her jealousy burned hotter with each headline about me, each award Stellar Events received, each time someone whispered, "Emma Carter. Isn't she amazing?" So Chloe did what she always did best. She schemed. First, she tried to undermine me publicly, planting rumors that Stellar Events overcharged clients, that my employees hated me. But Olivia swiftly shut those down, calling every outlet personally to defend me. Then Chloe tried to worm her way into my business. She applied to a PR firm contract under a pseudonym, hoping to fix my image. When I discovered it was her, I laughed and shredded the proposal. The final straw came when she ambushed me at a press conference. Cameras rolling, microphones thrust forward. Chloe pushed through the crowd and shouted, "Emma Carter isn't the woman you think she is. She abandoned her family. She's heartless, selfish, ungrateful. Reporters gasped. Cameras turned. But before the damage could land, I stepped forward. Chloe Carter, I said calmly. My sister. She's right about one thing. I did abandon something. I abandoned the belief that my worth depended on their approval. And it was the best decision I ever made. The crowd erupted in applause. Chloe's face twisted, but she couldn't compete with the truth. Her words backfired spectacularly. If Patricia was radioactive, Chloe became irrelevant. While my family fractured, stellar events thrived. We expanded into 5 cities. We produced galas, weddings, and corporate events for the world's elite. But the most powerful moment came when a major network aired a documentary about women entrepreneurs. There I was on screen walking through my offices, leading my team, commanding respect. The closing shot? Me saying, "Success doesn't need permission. Respect is non-negotiable." The episode went viral. Overnight, I became not just a CEO but a symbol, a story people told their daughters about resilience, about not letting family chains bind them, and that terrified Patricia and Chloe more than any gala ever could. Amid all this, Richard became my quiet ally. He defended me at the country club, shutting down Patricia's friends when they whispered. He corrected strangers when they called me the maid's daughter. He even introduced me once, proudly, boldly, as my daughter, the CEO. For the first time in my life, I saw him as something other than weak. I saw him as a man trying to rebuild, even if it was too late. But Patricia couldn't bear the loss of control. Her therapy sessions became frantic pleas to reconnect with Emma. She called me late at night, begging, weeping. One evening, she left a voicemail I'll never forget. "Emma, I can't breathe without you. I can't exist without being your mother. Please don't leave me behind." Her words were haunting, but they weren't about love. They were about control, about ownership. And I realized something chilling. Patricia didn't want a daughter, she wanted property. And I refused to be owned. Patricia Carter was once the queen bee of every room she entered. But after the charity gala disaster and Chloe's failed ambush, her empire of influence crumbled. The invitations stopped. Her friends abandoned her. Even her beloved charity boards quietly pushed her out. For someone who thrived on attention, the silence was suffocating. She tried to claw back relevance with staged apologies, teary interviews, social media posts about growth and forgiveness. But people saw through it. Every time she said my name, the world remembered the woman who treated her daughter like a maid. And so slowly she drowned, not in water but in her own irrelevance. But while Patricia collapsed, Richard began to rise. It started with small things, correcting gossip at the club, publicly praising me. But then he made a move no one expected. To a business luncheon, in front of dozens of CEOs and investors, Richard stood and raised his glass. "To my daughter," he declared, his voice firm, steady. "For years I failed to see her worth, but the world saw it anyway. And today I stand not just as her father, but as her biggest supporter. Emma Carter, the CEO who taught me what respect really means." The room erupted in applause. Patricia seethed, but Richard didn't care. For once, he wasn't hiding in her shadow. He was standing in mine, and he was proud to be there. If Patricia's downfall was slow, Chloe's was spectacular. Still desperate for validation, she launched her own PR campaign, branding herself as the real Carter success story. She booked photo shoots, gave interviews, even tried to start her own luxury event firm to rival mine. But the world wasn't buying it. Her firm's first event was a disaster. Catering failed, decor collapsed, and guests left early. Photos of the chaos went viral under the hashtag Chloe Carter fail. The comparisons were brutal. Emma Carter builds empires. Chloe Carter builds messes. One sister leads CEOs. The other can't even manage a dinner. Chloe spiraled. She lashed out online, blaming me, accusing me of sabotaging her. But no one believed her. Her mask shattered. The golden child was now a public punchline. Cornered, humiliated, and desperate, Patricia made one final attempt. She showed up at my office uninvited. No makeup, no designer gown, just a broken woman clinging to the scraps of her pride. "Emma," she whispered, tears staining her cheeks. "Please. I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this. You're my daughter. I need you." I stared at her, remembering every command, every insult, every time she introduced me as the help instead of her child. "You don't need me," I said coldly. You need control. And I won't give it to you. She sobbed. I just want to fix it. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to make it right. For the first time I smiled at her. Not with malice but with clarity. You can't. Because the damage isn't mine anymore. It's yours. And you'll have to live with it. She collapsed into the chair across from me, broken. But I didn't flinch that I had finally reclaimed the power she had stolen for decades. That evening, I attended a live interview for a global business summit. The host asked me, Emma, what's the biggest lesson you've learned on your journey from invisible to CEO? I looked directly into the camera and spoke words I had carried for years. Success doesn't need permission. Self-worth doesn't require validation. And respect is non-negotiable. For years I dimmed my light so others could shine. But now I refuse to shrink. I refuse to apologize for existing. And to anyone watching who feels small, who feels unseen, remember your value doesn't decrease because someone else refuses to see it. You are enough. Always. The audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered, and somewhere in that room, Patricia and Chloe sat in silence, forced to watch the maid they created become the queen they could never dethrone. Life after betrayal didn't look like a fairy tale. It looked like balanced. My company, Stellar Heights Events, had expanded into 5 cities. We employed over 100 talented people who trusted me to lead. The Food Network documentary had premiered worldwide, earning not just critical acclaim but respect from an industry that once ignored me. But beyond the numbers, the real change was internal. Every morning I looked into the mirror and reminded myself, I'm Emma Carter. Leader. Visionary. Not the family servant. Never again. Those words became my shield, my sword, my compass. Patricia didn't disappear completely. She tried, awkwardly, to piece together fragments of what she had destroyed. She attended therapy. She wrote me letters, pages filled with apologies that swung between genuine regret and desperate pleas for relevance. Sometimes I read them. Sometimes I didn't. One afternoon, she approached me at the country club. No entourage, no mask. Just a mother stripped of her throne. Emma, she said softly, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for your patience. I looked at her, really looked. For the first time in my life, I didn't see the woman who had made me her maid. I saw a woman who had built a castle on sand and now stood barefoot in the ruins. I don't hate you, I told her. But I don't need you either. My life isn't defined by your approval anymore. Her lips trembled, but she nodded. It was the closest we would ever come to peace. Richard, however, surprised me the most. Freed from Patricia's shadow, he blossomed. He started mentoring young entrepreneurs, became a silent investor in my company, and for the first time looked me in the eye with pride instead of hesitation. At family gatherings, when people asked about me, he no longer said, This is Emma, she works in events. Now he said, This is Emma Carter, my daughter, the CEO. And every time he said it, a piece of the little girl inside me healed. As for Chloe, her story became a cautionary tale. Her PR firm never recovered. She fled to Europe trying to reinvent herself, but the internet never forgets. Wherever she went, whispers followed. Isn't that the sister who tried to sabotage Emma Carter? Her name became synonymous with envy, failure, and bitterness. Sometimes I pitied her. But then I remembered the years she stood beside Patricia, smirking as I scrubbed floors and fetched drinks. Her exile wasn't my punishment, it was her consequence. Months later, I was invited to deliver the keynote speech at a global leadership conference. I walked onto the stage, lights blinding, thousands of faces watching. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I began. When I was a child, I was told my role was to serve, to stay quiet, to make others shine while I stayed in the shadows. My parents didn't see me. My sister mocked me. For years I believed them. But here's the truth, your worth isn't given by others. It's claimed by you. Success doesn't need permission. Self-worth doesn't require validation. And respect? That's non-negotiable. Today I stand here not as someone's maid, not as someone's shadow, but as Emma Carter, CEO, leader, and woman who finally chose herself. The applause shook the walls. Some cried. Some shouted. And in that moment I knew my story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to every person who had ever been made to feel small. And so I say to you, the one watching this video right now, have you ever dimmed your light so someone else could shine? Have you ever sacrificed your happiness for approval that never came? Have you ever been treated like less when deep down you knew you were more? Then hear me clearly. You are not someone's servant. You are not defined by their blindness. Your value doesn't decrease just because they can't see it. You are enough. More than enough, so stop waiting for their permission. Stop begging for their respect. Claim your power. Demand your space. And when you introduce yourself to the world, don't whisper. Say it loud. Say it proud, because if I, the maid in her parents' house, could become the boss in the boardroom, then so can you.